probably the day after I had made up my mind. 1,000% this is bullshit. And then all of a sudden realizing, wait a minute, what the fuck do I believe in? Now that I don't believe in that shit, what do I believe in? It just felt like the rug was swept from underneath me.
Welcome to Voices of Deconversion. We share the inspirational stories of deconversion told by former Christians who are now atheist or agnostic. Our stories remind us we're in it together. They encourage us as we discover who we are and help us to embrace who we become. Now here's Steve with today's guest.
Welcome back, everyone, for episode 22. Today's guest was a Jehovah's Witness for most of his life. He grew up as a young child knocking on doors to tell people about Jehovah and paradise. Later in his life, he gets disfellowshipped by the church, and it's at that point that he decides he needs to get his life together. Following his divorce, many years would go by, and he would still consider himself a Jehovah's Witness. It was only at this time, when his kids were grown, that he had decided that he would look into some of the claims of his church a little more. He does a great job of describing what it was like to be raised in a cult, and then eventually what it felt like to leave the church behind. He's direct and honest when it comes to how he feels about the church now, but he's also pretty laid back in this interview and has a great sense of humor. Be sure to check out his podcast, the Brighter Light Podcast, which you can find on YouTube. He and his co-host Kelly discuss cultural and social issues, and definitely what it's like being an ex-Jehovah's Witness. His laid-back demeanor and great sense of humor make his podcast a lot of fun to listen to. Now here's my interview with Anthos of the Brighter Light Podcast. All right, I am here with Anthos. You have a podcast. Tell me a little bit about that and kind of what you're working on these days.
I have a podcast. I'm from the ex-JW community, which stands for ex-Jehovah's Witness, past Jehovah's Witness, and one of the most notorious cults out there. A friend of mine out of nowhere who I knew in a group, we were just we're pretty good friends, and she was just hilarious. Everything that she would say and making a comment on something was just so funny. And we developed a pretty cool friendship, and throughout my knowing her, it was all about how funny she was to me. I guess this was, 2 years ago now? 2 summers ago, summer before last. And out of nowhere, while chatting with her, I was like, we should do a podcast. She's like, okay.
That's cool.
Just like that. No decision-making process at all. It just randomly popped out of me, and she just randomly immediately said, yeah.
That's awesome.
And everything just flowed perfectly. What's the name going to be? And, I came up with a couple of cheesy ideas, and she was like, the Brighter Light Podcast, based on this popular Jehovah's Witness saying about the path gets brighter, or some shit like that. I don't remember. I'm not the person to quote scriptures anymore. I forgot all that.
Oh man, it's sad for me too. I got a biblical studies degree, and sometimes I can't remember the stories anymore. I can't remember the verses. Like, oh, that's kind of bad, but maybe not. Maybe that's not bad.
Right, exactly. They're just fairy tales anyways. I always say the Bible is no more fact than the Harry Potter books. Except the Harry Potter books has got to be more believable and better stories.
Yeah, better story. More interesting to read, that's for sure.
All right.
So it's called the Brighter Light Podcast, and what kind of things do you do? I watched a few of them, or parts of a few of them, before we jumped on, or last week. But tell me a little bit about them.
We just get on there and no real format, just talking, and we're talking like you and your boys hanging out, and it's not, we don't censor ourselves in the way that we talk. There's plenty of podcasts for the people who are still, there's certain stages of the recovery. There's some this podcast may not be for, but then there's others who've been out long enough and they're completely apathetic now when it comes to having been in the religion. We're not completely, but
yeah,
the religion doesn't really matter to them in their current lives. So yeah, it's for those people. We talk about everything.
So yeah, so for the people who've kind of processed it, gotten through it, and now it's kind of like, I don't really care about religion anymore. But you can joke about it and kind of poke fun at it from time to time.
Yeah, we're cussing. There are plenty of moments of adult subject matter throughout, and it's nothing that it's not. We don't set out to make that happen. I mean, of course, I always welcome those types of conversations because again, it interests people, but there's
Yeah,
not anything out there like that. So
it's interesting.
it's
Yeah.
for those guys.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, so how long have you been doing the podcast?
Started in I think July of 2015.
Okay, cool.
And then I stopped for a while. It's been a while since I've recorded a new episode. It's been since about November of last year. So
Okay.
yeah, going on almost a year now.
And do you always have your friend on with you, or is it kind of hit and miss?
So she was only my partner for I think the first 5 episodes, and we wound up parting ways. We had a little falling out. It was kind of my fault.
Oh,
Uh,
well, that
no
happens.
intention, but it was a lot of misunderstanding. I would love to hear back from her. But anyways, I got a different host, a different co-host who was a guest, and she was the perfect guest. Her name was Kelly. Her name is Kelly, and
Oh
the episode
yeah.
went to well, it was the highest rated, and everybody seemed to love her, and so she became my new co-host. Hilarious.
Oh yeah.
She's so yeah.
Well, I heard her on one, I think, and you guys were. It's very specific. I think the Jehovah Witness experience. It's very unique. And so it was interesting hearing you guys talk about that because that's not my background. So it'll be
Got
I'm anxious to hear about that. But before we get into that, do you consider yourself an atheist now?
no, I lean towards it,
Okay.
but I always say I don't know. I mean, I don't believe. Like I said, I lean closer to it. I don't believe in a higher power. I need proof, and I don't know that the proof is not out there,
Yeah.
even though we may not be able to have that proof for another 100 years or something.
So
I
lean
don't know.
more agnostic kind of.
Yeah, but I almost want to say I'm atheist, but there's no way. Nobody knows. I don't think anybody can be atheist. Are you atheist?
I call myself an atheist just for simplicity, but
Got it.
as you noted, we can't know.
I believe nobody knows anything.
Yeah, as far as that goes, like it's just, I mean, it's proving something that we don't have knowledge of, really. So
Right.
yeah, I've heard a lot of people refer to themselves as agnostic atheists. So like the way they see it is that agnostic has to do with knowledge, and atheist is basically your belief. So you can't know, but you don't really believe anything's there. That's
Right.
kind of where I'm at.
Got it.
But
Isn't it just fine to be there? To
yeah,
know that you just don't.
right. It doesn't. You don't have. We don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
I think I like that. And I heard someone on a podcast once say that people refer to themselves as apatheistic, and
Well,
that
they
kind
just
of
don't give a shit.
yeah, exactly.
That's
Like what
awesome.
you were saying. I think that's kind of a cool term, apatheistic. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
let's get into a little bit of your story. So, in what ways was Christianity a part of your childhood, and how did it influence you growing up?
Single parent household. Just my mom and my two older brothers, who were 3 and 4 years older than me. Ever since I can remember, since I was like 6 or 7, my mom was studying with the witnesses when we were kids, and the congregation kind of became our fill-in for not having a father in the home, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we were hardcore. I used to go out in field service, knock on doors, give talks and shit. I was the first person to give a talk out of the 4 of us in my family, which is shocking because I was a very shy kid.
So, when you say give a talk, do you mean in front of a congregation?
Okay, yeah, there's a what they call a ministry school, and you go, you give a talk, which is like a Bible reading, almost like a sermon,
Mm-hmm.
and they give you 5 minutes, and they give you what scriptures, and you have to read that section, but you have to make a talk out of it. So you would
Oh,
write an intro, jump in the middle and wrap it up, and then finish the Bible reading, and then a conclusion.
okay.
And then when you go back to your seat, and they grade you on like the finer points and the parts where you need work.
Interesting. They're training you to be
Yeah,
little
but
little
everybody,
pastors or little preachers or
yeah, all culture training. But yeah, I used to do that. I used to knock on people's doors and everything.
And did
And
you, when you were at a young age?
starting when I was a young age, yeah.
Really? Wow. So like 6 or 7, or a little bit older?
I was about 9 when I was first knocking on doors and giving talks.
Wow. What kind of responses would you get from people? Or
Oh,
what?
just
Or yeah, that you
that are
remember?
culty responses. Oh, you mean from people at the door or?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'd knock on the door. I
Oh,
mean, I've
uh,
answered the door to Jehovah Witnesses, so I know what I've said or what I've.
they'd be generally nice to me because I was so little.
Yeah,
Oh, no, no, thank you, young man. And close the door nicely.
yeah.
I, yeah, I never really got anybody to turn into a Jehovah's Witness from knocking at their door or a Bible study. Yeah, and so then when I was 16 or 17, I got to go to my brother was going to a different congregation, and I got to start going with him.
Hmm.
And then I was somehow able to start like missing going to the meetings. Like you had to go on Sunday, and then there was one during the week, and these were each 2 hours. And then a what's called a book study, but it's like a they'd break the congregation into groups of like 6 different book studies.
Hmm.
And so you'd meet at someone's house in their Jehovah's Witness publications. You would do a study on one of the chapters each week for an hour. So 5 hours between 3 meetings there.
Dude.
So yeah, I started missing, and before I knew it, I was hardly ever going to the meetings. And
Now this intense kind of like schedule where you're spending 5 hours during the week going to these meetings, does that only occur as you get older, or did it happen from like?
hell no, it didn't matter if you were a toddler who had to be brought and kept awake through all these things.
And maybe I missed it, but why did you start to miss those meetings again?
Oh, hanging out with the boys, trying to do regular kid stuff, girl crazy, all that fun stuff.
Okay, so you're growing up and you're wanting to live life and be a normal kid.
To live life and be a normal kid, and it turned into drug experimentation and just a debaucherous lifestyle,
And
which
so
was which was all fun.
you're yeah, so your brothers were a little bit older than you said.
Right.
Were they doing the same thing? I mean, did they kind of
No,
follow that path too?
my oldest brother eventually did. About 4 years later, 3 or 4 years later. But my middle brother, he remained married, father, wholesome family guy, and everything.
All right, and he's still a Jehovah
No,
Witness.
none of us are anymore.
Okay, but
None of
he's
us, none of us boys, huh?
but he's more what'd you say, wholesome? You're like he's
Not any
married.
further. Yeah, he's not married to that woman anymore, and the kids are growing up. Um, he's with a new woman these days.
Okay.
But so I got to do that for my late teens. Um, when I was 21, I met through my friend's very beautiful mutual friend of ours, and we hit it off. She lived in Northern California, so she went back home. And about 8 months later, my friend calls me and says, "Guess who's here?" And she was back. She's like, she now lives with her. So we hit it off all over again. And um, by the time I was 22, which is all in a matter of 2 years, um, she winds up being pregnant.
Oh wow.
And we were trying to get in an apartment. And where my mom lived, there were some other Jehovah's Witnesses who were the managers of the apartment. My mom's like, "Oh, if you study with them, better chances of getting the apartment," because we were young, 18 and 22. It might have been a bit of a challenge to, no credit history or anything.
Right.
Um, so her and her husband decided to study the Bible with us and gave us an apartment to rent.
Okay.
And I dived in right off the deep end, full-fledged Jehovah's Witness guy again.
Okay, so you jumped back in your early
Harder than ever.
20s. Oh, wow.
I became baptized. Um, didn't do anything. I didn't even watch R-rated movies. I stopped listening to hip hop for the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, I actually, this is, I guess, really sad to admit now, but my wife is actually, it's embarrassing, it's ridiculous, but my wife and I, when we were friends in high school, we went through this phase, like with music, we burned all of our like,
Oh my
like
goodness.
my first, like Tupac's first cassette that came out, up in flames.
Uh,
And just every secular music, every secular,
right,
cassette
right,
tape.
right.
Yeah. So I associate with that.
Regretful, right?
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's like, what the hell were we thinking? We thought we were burning the demons away, you know?
Right. Please, dear God. So stupid.
I know, it's sad, but
Yeah.
whatever. So anyway, so what do you think it was about that time in your life, or what was it about you that made you get back into it?
Ignorance is bliss. And when I say that, I'm just talking about the whole blind faith thing. That's just out of sight, out of mind. I know that shit makes no sense at all, but it sounds great. I believe it, and I'm gonna live by it.
And do you think it was the influence of these people that not you didn't know these people? They weren't relatives. The people who
No,
okay, they're just a
but
nice couple
what
that
Jehovah's Wit-
yeah.
yeah, but for Jehovah's Witnesses, if they come across another Jehovah's Witness, they're like family they haven't met yet. So
Okay, so
yeah,
what do you think it was that because that they kind of took you under their wing a little bit that may have helped get you into it, or it was going to happen anyway?
I always knew that I always considered myself a Jehovah's Witness, even though I wasn't going.
Okay.
And in the back of my mind, I always wanted to quote unquote get my shit together and go back to the meetings so I can live in paradise because the system, this wicked end of the system's end is coming very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be destroyed like everybody else. I want to live in paradise forever and be young and all that shit.
Yeah.
Pet panda bear, etc.
Yeah, who doesn't want to live in paradise? Sounds great.
Just smiling all day. Nothing in particular, just smiling.
Yeah.
Just smiling upon each other, like, oh, finally. All day,
You mean,
forever.
yeah, eternally, just happy.
Uh, it didn't sound like it'd be great after a while. Everybody's up, perfectly young, got all their hair and no wrinkles.
Oh my goodness.
That's so silly. Can't believe
Yeah.
that
Well,
shit.
so you believed all of it. What did God mean to you on a personal level?
On a personal level, I felt that, he was watching everything that I was doing and, bless me for the things that I did right and the good shit that happened was because of God blessed me and whatnot.
We always would say like a personal relationship. Did you feel like you had that type of thing?
Yeah, I totally did.
Yeah.
I come to find out years later that my ex-wife, it really wasn't that way for her, and that she was. It's all been an act for her just to keep us together.
Wow. So
I
she
know, right?
did she so was she like a non-believer the whole time, or was she just not a Jehovah
She
Witness?
didn't believe it. She didn't believe it. She was Joe's witness. She got baptized also, but she never really truly believed.
Like in God?
I think she believed in God, but she didn't
Yeah.
believe in paradise and only Jehovah's Witnesses and all this other shit.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty crazy what people will do to like
I
keep a
know.
marriage together and
I don't know how she did that.
wow.
That's not an easy religion to be in, just to be doing it.
No. Yeah, you have to put up a pretty good act, I guess.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. They make sure that you're active, that you're giving talks, that you are answering during the meetings when they do the Watchtower study and
Mm-hmm.
the book study. Um,
And you said how
they
many
pressure
meetings did you have a week?
5 hours in a week, so two 2 hour ones and one 1 hour one.
Okay. And this is just during the weekday, on the weekend.
Both.
Wow.
Yeah, 2 hours on Sunday, and you're not to be going at your leisure. If you're not there every week, you're considered, one of the spiritually weak people. He
Wow.
doesn't make all the meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that they're pretty. They watch people. Like if people are like leaving the fold, then they pretty much like they try to bring them back
Yeah.
in, and if the person leaves, then they cut them off.
Yep.
Wow,
You can forget talking to your mom anymore if she's a Jehovah's Witness and you get disfellowshipped.
that's crazy.
She will not talk to you.
Well, can you point to a person or something maybe that influenced your faith the most during those years?
I don't know if it was just one person because since it was always big to me since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Uh, and when I was a kid, I don't know. I guess it was my family,
Okay.
my brothers, my mom. It was
And
just not even a thought of whether or not it's real.
yeah.
So I would say their influence.
Okay.
Get in the car, get in the car and going with them.
Yeah. So that's all your brothers and your mom and your and everybody was in your when you were in your 20s, like they were all Jehovah Witnesses at that point. And
Yeah,
okay, well,
childhood indoctrination. That's what
pretty.
it was for me.
Hmm.
Not really a choice.
Yeah, no, I mean, you grow up that way and you that's all you know.
It's all that I know. There is no standing back and going, because that's all that I know. It's all that I think that I know.
Yeah. Well, what else is significant about your life up to this point? At this point, like in the story, you're in your 20s, you just got married, your wife's pregnant,
Yeah.
right? And you're living with these Jehovah Witnesses. So up to that point in your life, was there anything else that you look at and you say, that was really significant?
So let's go to 20 years later.
Okay.
She and I are not married anymore. Um, our kids are young adults, 18 and 20. And 2014, I had just come to this point in my life to where, certain videos would cross my path regarding Jehovah's Witnesses and, going in depth about them.
Yeah.
And as a Jehovah's Witness, you're taught to never, ever look at anything like that. Don't look at any material or listen to any material, watch any material that is teaching against Jehovah's Witnesses, which they're called apostates.
Yeah.
And when you're a Jehovah's Witness, an apostate is the worst human being you could ever come across. They are demon possessed people who just want to turn you away from God, and that they have malice in their heart. It's best to stay away from them because they're under demonic influence.
So when you'd come across these videos, I bet you were a little bit nervous, maybe, or hesitant.
Not nervous, but I just would I'm not looking at that apostate garbage. And I came to a point where I just felt like a little superstitious, and I felt like it'd be okay for me to look at stuff and learn about the Jehovah's Witnesses outside of what they're saying. If it's a lie, it's a lie,
Yeah.
and the lie will be disproven. If it's truth, it is what it is. I want to know everything, and man, I found out they're so full of shit.
So for those 20 years, you just lived the Jehovah Witness life then?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time.
All right. No, wait a minute. That's a lie. For the duration of our marriage, which was just about 7 years,
Okay.
and I got disfellowshipped, which means that nobody can talk to me.
Oh. And you were about 30 years
Cast it
old
out.
at that point?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like 29. Yeah.
Okay.
hmm And
Why'd you get disfellowshipped?
sex.
Ah.
Yeah. Anytime you hear somebody get disfellowshipped, more than likely it has to do with sex. More than likely.
But you guys were married at the time, right? Was it like another relationship I mean, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Circumstances in our relationship pretty much took away our closeness as a couple. So after a while, it was like we weren't even married.
Yeah.
But regardless, you're not supposed to do anything. Regardless, so they asked me if I needed to tell them anything. The elders did, was like,
They
yeah, I do.
they
And
must have known,
you
huh?
tell on yourself, which is so weird.
Yeah, that is. It's creepy, kind
They
of.
probably assumed because they hadn't seen me in a while that he must be doing something. 9 times out of 10, we don't see people. They're not just not here. They're doing shit.
They're up to no good. Yeah.
That's no good. Yeah. And yeah, they asked me and I told them and they just fellowshipped me
Okay.
and I wanted to go back.
You did at that point. You wanted to be a part of
I
the
did.
church.
I was
Okay.
like, fuck, I fucked up. I need to get my shit together and get back.
Okay.
It's my brothers and sisters. You got to go to all the meetings, not miss any of them for like 6 months straight. I hear it's different now, but back then, like you had to go in there, and the way you walk in there with your head down. You don't want to get eye contact with anyone because it'll be uncomfortable for you and that person. So you walk in just as it starts with your head down, and you sit in the back, the very back row. Hopefully nobody sees you. And when you sing the songs, you only lip sync them. Like your voice cannot even be heard singing the songs of the congregation.
Is this just what you do, or is this like an expectation?
We need disfellowship. Yeah, you never hear a disfellowship person sing. It is so funny.
And so that's just how people respond naturally, or is that like kind of the expected behavior?
That Jehovah wants them to do with a disfellowshipped person. So like you get eye contact, like you don't even smile at that person. You don't even give like an encouraging, like, so glad to see you, brother. Keep coming, smile. Like you look away.
That's interesting. So you got disfellowshipped, but they'll let you come and like observe the service.
Yeah.
Okay.
You go there for your spiritual food, as they would call it. But you cannot associate, you can't even talk with anybody. So I went to a couple of meetings and it was just tough. I instantly started missing all my meetings. And so then we'll get to 20 years later, missing all these meetings now. But I'm thinking I gotta get it together. I gotta get back to the meeting. And I found out some shit. And that was it for me.
So for that time that you got, from the time you got disfellowshipped for the next few years or whatever, it was kind
Right.
of, you'd go to a few meetings and then you wouldn't go, and then it was kind of hit and miss.
Not even a few years. I would say the next few meetings. I went to a few of them
And then you were, and
and
then,
I was just absent. Yeah.
okay, absent for like years.
Never be seen again at a Kingdom Hall.
Okay.
But then since then, I read about the big child molestation scandal. There were over 1,000 child molestation cases that have been covered up by the Jehovah's Witnesses
Oh,
without turning anyone into the police. They're like, oh, we'll just handle it in-house. We don't need to get the authorities involved and have, bring reproach upon Jehovah's name, make them look bad, because they want to look like they're the spotless ones
yeah.
while pointing the fingers at the Catholics and everybody else. So they thought it was best. That's cheating, really, when you think about it. It's totally cheating.
Yeah.
So they would keep it all in-house. You don't need to go to the authorities. We'll handle it. So they came out, and there was a big trial. The Australia's version of the Supreme Court, the Royal Commission, they were on trial with the Royal Commission for like a few weeks. Mind-blowing stuff. So I found that out. Then I find out about all these failed prophecies, too many to number, and the stories behind some of the prophecies. Um, they built a compound, this big giant mansion on this property in San Diego. Might have been the 30s. This is when Kelly is great on the podcast. I have the stories, and I have I have the little stories, and she's the one with all the facts and information. Yeah, that was 1932, and it was Psalms 22:12 where they said,
So it's good to have your
uh,
co-pilot.
she's perfect.
That's cool.
She's the reason why there hasn't been a new one yet because I decided I'm not going to do it, bring it back without her.
Cool.
But uh, we should be doing one soon, next week or so. But anyways,
So when you were around 30 years old ish is when you got disfellowshipped. And how many years? And then you went to a few meetings, and then how much time went by from then until you started learning all this stuff about the church?
About 15 years.
Okay, so for that 15-year period, you were absent from the church.
Hmm.
Okay.
And then I started reading everything I could get my hands on, and everything that I read pointed more and more towards this being a Mickey Mouse operation religion that I've known since I was a child, and I just believed all the bullshit. There's so much bullshit. So much. Yeah, up until then, that's what I believed.
So you said
Um,
there's so much bullshit. So what, like, what's one thing that pops out in your mind? So much bullshit. Um, what's one thing that pops out in your mind that really blew you away when you
well,
found it
shit.
out? I mean,
Aside from living in paradise forever with a pet lion, or no, their anti-blood transfusion.
oh right.
So if you're dying or your child is dying, you have to refuse blood.
Yeah, that's always seems so crazy to me.
That's as culty as it gets.
Yeah. Let that it's essentially the church saying, let them die, and you have to obey.
And Jehovah will bless you with eternal life. You'll see each other. All this crazy shit. The whole disfellowshipping. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So many things that are just not loving of a loving God. That just doesn't make sense. So once I looked at everything, found out all this absurd information. United Nations, they were they had some type of membership with the United Nations, so they can gain access to a library or some stupid shit that they said.
Hmm.
And the United Nations to Jehovah's Witnesses is like the beast itself, and it does not only does it not respect it, but it's they consider it like Satan's visible organization on earth. Like you would want nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
To find out they had a membership for about 11 years with a sector of the United Nations,
Oh.
and then they canceled it as soon as it became public. Oh, in retrospect, it wasn't a good idea.
To literally make a deal with the devil in there. I mean, that's kind of the teaching was like
Exactly.
it's evil. It's like Satan's organization. They're like, we could make a kind of an agreement here or have a deal. Yeah.
I voluntarily had connection with Satan's organization. Yeah.
Wow. So hypocrisy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where it all ended for me. And yeah, now I have no problem saying it's total bullshit. When about 5 years ago, I'd be scared of being struck by lightning, right when I say it.
It's hard
Not
when
anymore.
you first leave because you still have the feelings and the emotions that are still there. It's hard to
Yeah.
shake that.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh, as far as
Have you shooken it?
I think I have now, but at first one of the things I remember is one, the word atheist was terrifying. Like it meant evil and it meant bad and immoral. And like if you're an atheist, you're an asshole, Like that's how I thought of atheists as a Christian.
Yeah.
And so that was a scary term, but I felt like, well, but I don't believe in God, so I'm an atheist, but I didn't want to tell anyone. Like I was terrified to have anyone find out I wasn't Christian, And then another thing that was hard for me was like when I'd be in the car driving and I'd have a thought or I'd be worried about something or I'd be thankful for something, I'd want to pray. And I'd have this really strong urge to pray, and it felt horrible because I was so used to depending on that to vent and to process stuff that I was just like, well, this is useless. I'm talking to the car,
Right.
That was hard. That was a hard adjustment.
I would say that was the hardest part for me when I realized probably the day after I had made up my mind. 1,000% this is bullshit. And then all of a sudden realizing, wait a minute, what the fuck do I believe in?
Oh no.
Now that I don't believe in that shit, what do I believe in? It just felt like the rug was swept from underneath me.
Yeah.
Like no faith, no hope, or any of that shit that I had when I was a Jehovah's Witness. Hope of seeing my mom again and the new system, and wow, it was just so crazy.
And is your mom still a?
Now she passed away in 2013, and she totally went. Yeah, she totally went with no problem at all. Like Jehovah take me.
Okay.
Like yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. She wasn't worried about it. And I
Well,
always tell people, if she were alive and I realized it was bullshit, I wouldn't even have told her just for that reason. She needed her religion.
man, I know that's the hardest thing. Like my wife actually just told her story on the podcast, and she's told me you when she was growing up, she kind of had a difficult, kind of lonely childhood, and she said it's what kept her alive. I mean, she had thoughts of wanting
Yeah,
to die. She had thoughts of from a very young age, and I mean to think of someone and coming in saying guess what, he's not really there to that child who's struggling and needing something to hope in, like, or your mom who's close to death, and like it's cruel to take that
that's
from
why I
them.
say that's why I say ignorance is bliss, man.
Yeah.
That you pull yourself away from what's real and what's not real, and you just get to enjoy this fake life with fake promises and hopes.
Do you ever think about it? Like, what if you never found all this stuff out? Do you think you'd be happy if you were blissfully ignorant?
Well, I'll have to say some of my happiest times in my life were in my very religious years.
Hmm.
And I'll say it again, ignorance is bliss. I mean, I was just in this bubble
Yeah.
that wasn't real, and it felt good. But is your question? Are you asking me? Do I wish that or how would I be today? Would I be happy to continue to be in that bubble?
Well, I'm not. I don't want to ask like, do you wish you were still Jehovah Witness? That's not really what I'm asking. But I mean, I guess sort of. That is kind of what I'm saying. But I guess what I'm getting
You
at
mean,
is like
do I wish without knowing, without ever knowing, without ever finding out? Do I miss those? I don't know.
kind of blissful years. Yeah, those ignorant years where like we didn't
I,
know. I mean, I've had those thoughts, and that kind of popped in my head, and that's why I
I don't
asked
know
it.
how long I could have done it though. I honestly, I don't know how long it would have been before where I would have just been like, would I always be okay with not learning everything about this religion?
Well, and at some point you're going to
Or would
stumble
it,
across the child abuse, or you're going to stumble across the hypocrisy with the United Nations. At some point you're going to run across that stuff, right? It's a matter of
right.
time. And I mean, I always felt like I eventually would have become an atheist no matter what, because I would have eventually come across this stuff.
How did you come across it?
For me, well, I was studying the Bible, and so I learned basically who wrote it, how it was written, how it was cobbled together, the ways it was changed over
Uh-huh.
time, and it just took all the I had believed in inerrancy, so to see the Bible being kind of patchwork put together and then voted on, and that's how it got approved. Like
Uh,
it's a political book, from the thousands of years ago.
right.
It just took all of the divinity away from the Bible, and I just saw a book, a religious book that people created, and so it just wasn't. It was the House of Cards. I mean, it was like that. Everything crumbled, after
How
that.
how ridiculous did the Bible become to you after you realize that, and you started to think of some of the stories that are just so ridiculous.
Yeah, like I do think like there's some of the proverbs are kind of cool, or there's some of the psalms can be kind of beautiful.
Oh, I'll say there's a lot in the Bible that's even useful even
Sure, but
to
yeah,
this day.
but like
Um,
don't put two cloths together, or if your kids disobey you, stone them to death. I mean,
right.
it's yeah.
I was gonna say Kelly's favorite story is the Lot and his daughters
Oh my god,
getting him drunk and having sex with him and impregnating themselves
it's
while
ridiculous.
he passed out drunk on top of it.
It's like who thought to put that in writing?
Right,
You know, like, oh,
right,
that's a good story. Where the
right.
daughters sleep with the dad and then they get pregnant. Oh, write that down. Write that down. you know,
Craziness.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The genocide where God commands people, like an army, to just wipe out entire peoples. Entire
Right.
races of people or whatever.
Yeah, that's another thing that fucked with me too.
That does not like
Um,
sit well with anyone. I mean, even when I was a
Dude,
Christian, it's like, oh, like God, that sounds really like
right. Doesn't
extreme.
sound loving.
Right.
Sound like a loving God. Everybody on the earth was so bad, including babies and everyone, every single person, that you had to flood the whole damn place. Okay.
There's this funny meme that my wife showed me. It says, when someone pisses me off, I just think, what would God do? And then I drown them.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Uh, what's the one guy's name? Job.
Okay. Yeah.
Man, that story's so fucked up.
Yeah. You know what's crazy? That one, the phrase. I used to love the verse that was, "Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him."
Wow.
I loved it because I felt like if I'm going through a hard time, I'll still trust God and I'll be faithful to God and
Right.
I'll be a good Christian. You know, it's the right thing to do.
At the end of the story, what happened? God blessed him all over again,
Right.
gave him all of his riches back and new kids
Oh yeah.
to
So
replace the other ones.
screw the dead ones. Who
He was
needs those?
stoked. Oh man, he gave more kids and everything.
Yeah. Like
So
I did.
God blessed him.
I like these kids better
God blessed
anyway.
him. So that was Job's
Oh.
reward for being a faithful servant of God. He he was such a faithful servant that Satan wanted to test him, and God said, "All right, cool, just don't kill him."
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did everything but kill him.
So bizarre.
Nice, nice.
Like, why is that necessary to grow his faith?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think was the most, I guess, difficult thing for you in that whole process? In leaving the church, what was the most difficult thing for you, do you think?
Like I said a few minutes ago, the realization that it's all fake,
Yeah.
and then just feeling lost, like a spiritual baby, having no clue of anything anymore.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait. Oh, that means I don't believe that anymore. What? Oh my God. That was just I was depressed for let's say a good 90 days.
I struggled with depression. I mean, and I don't know if it was biological, like it would have happened anyway, but man,
Right.
losing my faith was devastating. Yeah, I hit some lows.
Yeah, devastating. Just to have these idiots think that we just decided that we don't love God anymore. You're
Right.
just godless. And you're under the powers of Satan and don't even know it. Fuck you. You have no idea.
Or like you just want to live a life of sin, but in fact,
Right.
a lot of us when bad things happened, we turned back to God. Our faith
Right.
deepened. It wasn't, these things that happened in our life that were negative that caused us to leave God. It was a combination of things in most cases, but usually negative experiences often drive Christians back to God,
Totally.
Yeah. Like in your case, you got disfellowshipped and you were like, I got to get right. I got to get my life together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't want the conclusion of this earth to come. They call it the system.
The
This current
system?
world system. I don't want this system of things to come to a close while I'm not on the right side of God.
Wow.
Have to be destroyed like everyone else for eternity and lose out on my resurrection hope and seeing all my dead loved ones again
They use
forever.
such interesting terms. The Jehovah Witnesses have very specific terms that are
They do.
unique to them.
They do. They want to anywhere they can have these code words, not necessarily code words, but these certain words and phrases that they don't use instead of just the usual word that everybody else knows. And they even do that with their publications. They have Jesus and everybody with short hair, and they have a mustache and beard, but it's groomed all nicely and
That's
clean
interesting.
cut, hair all dippity dude and nice. Uh,
No hippie Jesus.
no hippie Jesus,
It's got to
no.
be clean cut.
He's clean cut and he's visibly clean. Yeah, nails all manicured and shit.
Oh man, that's so weird.
Totally weird. So, and another way that they do that is with He didn't die on a cross. He died on an upright stake, according to Jehovah's Witnesses. Like they took all the power out of that and want to have nothing to do with that. So you know, a big old separation from other religions.
So he didn't I didn't hear what you said. He didn't die on a cross, he died on a what?
On an upright stake.
Oh, so that's what they call it.
So his feet and his hands are in opposite directions of him. His hands are straight up.
Mm.
There's no cross in the middle. His arms aren't outstretched.
It's like maybe they just wanted to be different.
That's exactly what it was.
Got to differentiate
Exactly what it
themselves.
was. We don't believe in the cross. Yeah. We don't
Weird.
wear that shit. We don't believe in that. You don't see that anywhere. Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
there's
one of the big scriptures was Jesus saying, "I was I'm no part of the world, and you are to be no part of the world either."
mm,
So they don't do anything that they even deem worldly, like celebrate any holidays,
that's
no
right.
world traditions, no birthdays, nothing.
So, how did that affect you when you left? Because you didn't celebrate all that stuff growing up. It was normal to you. So now, what's it like to celebrate a birthday or a holiday?
They fucked it all up. To this day, it's not a big deal to me.
Hmm.
I try to celebrate, but if it's too much trouble, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all because of the JWs. It's not a big deal
Yeah.
to me. A birthday
Yeah, I would think that would be a hard adjustment for sure.
totally is. Christmas, I try my damnedest to get into the Christmas spirit, but it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
It's more a big deal to my friends, and I try to meet them with the enthusiasm, but my enthusiasm is never even close to theirs.
Well, what's funny is on the opposite end, like I grew up with parents that like love Christmas. And so
Right.
it was a big deal. And then when I got older and we couldn't quite celebrate Christmas like I did when I was a kid,
Why not?
oh, I don't know, like traditions change or like, I get married and I move out. And so like, now I do Christmas with my family or,
Okay.
yeah, it's just, traditions change or whatever. And it's not exactly how it was when you grew up. So then there's some like, there's a little bit of a letdown when when you come from that side of it, from that background, it's like a letdown
Right.
as you get older. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's kind of good in that sense. Like you don't have to, find out Santa's not real when you're a kid. Like you just never believed in him. Probably, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I can't imagine. I've run into people I've known at work and stuff who were Jehovah Witnesses and didn't celebrate anything, and I feel sad for them. Like they don't get to like celebrate anything.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's like
No birthday cake or candles to blow out ever.
wow.
It's
The
so
thing that
fucked
gets
up.
me is like as an adult, it's not that big of a deal. Like when we grow up, it's like okay, we want to have nice birthdays, but whatever. We're adults. But for kids, I just think that's
I
sad.
know.
Like a 4-year-old
Can't blow
kid,
out can't blow out no candles. Can't blow out 4 candles.
no
Come on.
presents. Yeah,
Come.
it's hard.
It's so messed up.
Yeah. Well, what do you think for you was the most helpful thing? So we've kind of talked about a little bit about how, a lot of the things that were difficult, but what was the most helpful for you in kind of coping with leaving the church and kind of finding yourself a little bit? What do you think helped you the most?
Just my thoughts that God would show me the way if I was wrong. He would answer my prayers, even though I didn't literally pray. I thought in a prayer-like sense, in hopes of Him showing me the way, showing me that what I'm thinking is a mistake.
That actually was one of the things that helped me the very most as well. I read the verse that says, man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. That was
Exactly.
like I loved that
Yeah,
verse
He knows
when
my
I was
heart. Right.
yeah when I became an atheist. I loved that, and I still like that idea because like you, I feel like yeah
If you're wrong. Right.
yeah he knows I'm sincere. In other words,
Right.
yeah. Well, that's cool. I like that answer.
And has He shown you anything to make you slightly change your mind?
He hasn't reached out. No,
Right.
I haven't
Exactly.
got any phone calls, no text messages, nothing.
No passing thought that made you go, damn.
No new book. Yeah, no new book that came out that was like, guess what? It is real.
Right.
Like,
Right.
oh, I missed it. I studied it for 4 years. But
And I'm not asking for much. I just need a little teeny tiny hint.
I know. And not even that. He won't even give us the little things sometimes.
Guess what? Did you hear? Anthos died. Oh, I guess he had his answer, didn't he? Got swiped him dead because he didn't believe him. Everybody else returns to their faith because of me.
Oh my goodness.
If I die, it's not because of him.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, anything that happens, a Jehovah Witness or a Christian is gonna find a way to explain it through the Christian lens. You know,
Right.
through the
Exactly.
Jehovah Witness
Everything's
color
relative,
glasses.
right?
Yeah. Well, so we've talked about like this huge change in your life because you grew up Jehovah Witness with those traditions and all that, and um, you deconverted, you've left Jehovah Witness Christianity behind. Um, what about you from the time you were young till now? Even though you went through this huge change, what about you stayed the same? Something positive.
Most of my best qualities, um, I will attribute to having been in the cult that has groomed me with a conscience, groomed me to have a conscience, and yeah, my better qualities definitely come from having been in the cult. That's the one thing that I will give them. People tell me, mutually, when you become a good friend of someone, you realize each other is awesome, and I know why they think that uh, I'm awesome when they think that I'm awesome, and it's because of a lot of the sincere, good qualities that I have having that come from having been a Jehovah's Witness. That's it.
Sincerity, is that what
With
you?
no other credit.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and just the humanitarian in me and the desire to want to be a good character.
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
Well, when you think back on the Jehovah Witness version of yourself, what do you think about that person now?
much better, much more enlightened than I ever could have been if I were Jehovah's Witness.
But what do you think about when you think about the Jehovah Witness version of you? What do you think of that person? So, do you view that person as less enlightened and
Oh, totally.
yeah,
Was closed-minded and under the control of a cult,
yeah?
having jammed down my throat what they wanted me to learn.
Is it pretty
Yeah,
freeing to feel like now you can just the world is before you, you can just learn whatever you want and not be constrained by
right. Everything that you learned was from their books and magazines. So if you did research on other religions, it was out of their books.
wow. Yeah, they
Right.
filter it all.
Yeah.
Well, is there something that you would say you like best about being a non-believer?
Shit, I'm living now. I'm not under not under a tremendous amount of guilt with every step that I take. I don't have to worry about what Jehovah says or what the Watchtower says because it's bullshit. Notice I keep saying that.
Yeah, no, that's
Every time I mention them.
that's a key word in this interview, I think. well, well, it applies. So,
Totally.
yeah. Name one thing you've learned or experienced that you might not have if you were still a Jehovah Witness.
There are great people in all walks of life. You know, when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you believe that only Jehovah's Witnesses were good people and the others are wolf in sheep's clothing. And I've met some of the best people that I never would have met if I were under the strict thumb of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, that's a major thing that I learned.
Tell me about one of your friends or one of the people that you met.
All of them, all my best friends are
Mhm.
not Jehovah's Witnesses.
Just different religions or non-religious or
Non-religious, religious, yeah. When I think back at my Jehovah's Witness friends, they're non-existent. Only my friends who have been associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses and have never fully committed and become baptized, just always on the fence. I have a couple of those friends that I'm still friends with, but other than that, yeah, none of my friends from when I was a Jehovah's Witness. Our friendship is non-existent because I'm disfellowshipped.
Yeah, would you be friends with them if they weren't?
Totally.
Yeah,
If they
yeah.
didn't have a problem with that, with me being disfellowshipped, absolutely. I
Wow.
wouldn't care that they're practicing witnesses under the stronghold of a cult. I wouldn't hold it against them.
Yeah, yeah. But they can't. But they can't associate with you.
They
So
can't do that. Yeah,
that's
they can't, and they won't.
wow. When you think back about your entire experience of deconversion from Christianity, what are you most proud of when you think back on it?
Myself, the fact that I of a small percentage that actually wakes up. A lot of people don't wake up and they die having missed their entire lives being a part of a cult.
Wow.
Man, I feel so bad for those people.
Yeah.
80-year-olds that spent their entire years wrapped up in a cult that's not even true, missing out on regular life.
There's a quote that comes to mind. What's it? It's we all have two lives. The second one begins when we realize we have only one.
Nice.
Yeah, I think about that because when you wake up from a cult or you wake up from a fundamentalist background of some sort, you realize this is it. This is our one shot, and we got to make it the best we
Yeah,
can.
I have to remember that when I'm talking to a friend who wants to remain blind. You only got one life. It's completely unreasonable to not make sure that you're using that one life properly,
Yeah, live it to the fullest.
not wasting it, not wasting it with some people who tell you that they have the truth.
Well, is there anything that we haven't discussed about that you'd like to share?
No, you were perfect. I felt like we covered a lot.
Yeah, yeah, we did. It was really interesting to hear, and Jehovah Witnesses always blow me away with their stories. I mean, I've interviewed a few
Crazy
people.
stuff.
It's just it's
Tragic.
crazy. Yeah, it
Yeah,
really is. I mean, it can really mess people up. It really
yeah.
does. You know, and like you said, I mean, it's a cult. It's
Oh,
got
totally is man-made. Twisting up the scriptures for their own points. Totally. Yeah.
that messes with people's heads big time. And like you were saying, like you still have some of that residual. There's it's residual. Some of the effects
Certain
that
things. Yeah.
it sticks with you. Some of that.
Yeah. We'll have to get you on an episode of Brighter Light podcast
Yeah,
sometime.
yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to be on.
Do you drink beer or wine or smoke or anything like that?
Mainly drink beer. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to have a six-pack handy
There
for the
you
Brighter
go.
Light podcast. That's how we do it on there.
Hey, I'd be down for it.
I can't do this stuff any other way.
When I'm doing the interviewing, I want to be like sharp mentally. I want to like make
Yeah.
sure I'm on top of things. But if I'm on your podcast,
Right.
if you tell me I have to drink to be on your podcast, I'll have to drink.
No, you don't have to, but that's the version that I want of you.
Yeah, I obviously, like most people, open up a lot when
Right.
you speak your mind more.
Yeah.
Well, just a couple more questions real quick. I started the podcast for obviously, Christians who recently deconverted. What encouragement or piece of guidance can you give that person?
Just whatever you're believing in, whatever organization you're believing in, know every last thing about it, just as you would do with anything that you're devoting your life to. Know everything. Do your research.
Yeah.
Don't have blind faith. It's not reasonable for intelligent people. Shouldn't be.
What's one resource that you would recommend for that type of person? Maybe a ex Jehovah Witness.
Simple Google search and go down the rabbit hole.
Just follow the crumbs where they lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Twitter, Brighter Light Podcast, or hashtag BLP will bring you to it. Brighter Light Podcast at gmail.com is my email address.
Okay, brighterlightpodcast@gmail.com, hashtag BLP on Twitter, or just looking up Brighter Light Podcast.
Brighter Light Podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it to
Cool.
me.
Well, Anthos, it's been really awesome hearing your story. I really appreciate you carving out time during the weekday to do this. So it's later over there, so I do appreciate you taking time to do this. It was awesome hearing your story. So
yeah, I had a good time. Thank you, and for sure we got to get you to come on.
I'm looking forward to it. It'd be fun.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Deconversion. Be sure to join us next time by subscribing to the podcast. If you have a deconversion story you would like to share, email us at steve@vodpodcast.com.